Hello, my name is Taylor Hunt. I am currently a undergraduate student at CU studying geography. The collaborators and mentors that helped me on this project was Madison Langseth from USGS Survey, or the US Geological Survey, Science Analytics and Synthesis, Maxwell Joseph, data scientist from Earth Labs, and Jenny Palomino, who is the former faculty and curriculum developer for Earth Analytics in Education. So the project kind of went into USGS began kind of examining the reuse of USGS data and whether it was cited. This process started out by manually searching USGS digital object identifiers in related publications from the data releases. So this kind of looked like I would go in and search or plug in the related publication URL, and then the journal will pop up and I would search for the DUI prefix, the 10.5066 for USGS. And then I would annotate who the publisher was, the pub year, whether the data was cited and where it was cited. This proved to be like a timely process. So this moved into programmatically identifying the publication's data citation practices. Next. So it leads to the question of what is a digital object identifier. So DUI is a persistent identifier, and when it is joined with a URL, it becomes clickable to where once that DUI is clicked on, it will reroute you to the assigned URL. And it's put like where I guess like your social security number, if you were to move addresses, your social security number would not change. So much like a DUI, if the URL were to change to like the new address when it changed, you'd be able to still kind of find the DUI. And this is important for a number of reasons as far as like, I don't know, like finding data can be difficult, processing data can be difficult, looking for data can be difficult. And so having kind of like data in a DUI setting where it can be cited easier can increase, well, scientific discoveries. It can increase the flow of data or the access to data, as well as creating a better, more public accessible data for future studies. So this was the one question we were focusing on for this portion of the project was how often are people citing USGS data release digital object identifier? And this process kind of looked like this. Next slide. So this one is kind of, yeah. All right. So we started out with this spreadsheet containing the data release DUI and the related publication URLs. And we were able to access Crossref through the package Habanero, which made the information accessible in order to extract the data we wanted from it. So instead of doing the manual process, it was kind of more programmatically automated. So we looked for the publisher date, published, the publisher, and whether or not they had a reference section, and whether or not the data release reference section was in there. From that, we were able to create a pandas data frame, kind of organizing that information, which was kind of a process for me as of like looking at like how like functions and loops within like kind of able to kind of look at the, I don't know, it was abstract for me in a lot of ways, whereas like kind of taking information, organizing it, and then being able to kind of analyze that information in like an organized setting. So that was, so we ended up filling out the whole spreadsheet by summer, which was nice. It ended up being around 1,354 entry points for that. And we were able to analyze it to a certain extent, but that process is still kind of ongoing. Next slide. So this led us to the question, so does the related publication have a reference section in Crossref? This was kind of created with like the Boolean statement of true or false. 62.6% did not have a reference section in Crossref compared to the 37.4% that did. So that led us to the following question, was the data release DOI in the references? with a 89.9% no and a 10.1% yes. So I think it's worth noting as well, during the manual process of going through it, most of the time the data was mentioned. However, it was mentioned in various parts of the publication. So some of it was in the main body text, some of it was in acknowledged statements, some of it was in the reference section, but a lot of it was in the main body statement. And that kind of goes into the next part of the project. So for me, this was kind of just looking at like the trend of how data is cited. So looking at like the publication years. So there's more data from the data that was in Crossref and that had the data release DOI in the reference section. The year 2019 was most prevalent in that. So we can kind of like take this and look at it from a trend line of data is being cited more now than it was prior, as it is still kind of a new thing as far as data citation practices go. And so this leads us into the next part of the project where we're looking at a public, which kind of lets us text mine throughout and see where exactly the data was cited, if it was cited, and it can kind of go into more of an analysis as far as years progress. But I think I'm still working on the analysis part of this. I found that the visualization was a challenge for me as far as like creating better visuals with the data that is there. I definitely need to work on that aspect. But yeah, so years prior, I don't know, I just never knew like really any of this existed. So it's been kind of a fun process, and getting introduced to it and being exposed to it has been a awesome experience. So I want to thank like everybody for kind of helping me in this process, as well as letting me kind of tag along during this Earth Data Science core. And I'm really appreciative of my mentors that kind of helped carry this on and like really introduce me to this. Because like I said, prior to like 6 months ago, I had no idea any of this really existed and like knew very little about Python or coding. So that is it. And thank you.